What's up?
it's so weird to like not, to not have a presentation coming up in 5 minutes.
I know, seriously. I was saying that to Corey earlier. I'm like, I just like we always talk right before, but then we always go into this presentation. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are we
Like
gonna
it's
talk
like a
about?
it's like a Pavlovian response. Um I know because I think okay, so first of all, so you had done a lot of BA work before, right?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
I did do lots of BA work. I've done kind of different sorts of BA work, but yeah. What about you? Is that your first time?
No, it's been probably like around 4 or 5 years or so on and off. But Proof was my first like big gig, like the Health Canada tour 2018, summer 2018.
Yeah.
Were you around for like had you done something for Proof? No?
No, I had never done anything for Proof. The way I got into it, funny enough, a girlfriend of mine was like, we had done a BA gig actually together in October, and she was like, "Hey, I saw this online thing come through. I think you'd be really good at it. You should try messaging them." So then I
Yeah.
just shot them a message, and that's kind of how I got in with Proof. I had never even heard of them.
Oh, yeah, that's weird because yeah, in my mind, like you seemed like you had been there for a while. Like I don't know, you just seem so natural and sort of like you'd been there for a while, but guess not. Yeah, I mean, so the tour I did in 2018, like that was the first, yeah, big. Like we traveled across the entire country. It was fun, but it was also like kind of pretty stressful. And
Yeah.
yeah, like compare, I don't know, like compared to like this gig where it's like work at home, I much prefer working from home, honestly,
Oh my
because
God. I was just gonna say, like, wasn't it not so much more relaxing to just wake up and be like,
oh,
ah,
I fucking loved it. Like I even really enjoyed the early morning ones because it's like a nice way to sort of like, yeah, roll out of bed, just prepare a little bit, and then you're good to go. You don't need to like what I hated the most from the tour was like just the constant like the long hours between activations where you're like still kind
yeah,
of working, and it's just the constant sort of I don't know, man. But before we get ahead too much of ourselves, I mean, this
yeah,
is a podcast where hopefully people will listen to it. Besides our
amazing.
relatives, have you done a podcast before?
No, I've never done a podcast
It's your
before. I'm
first
so
time.
excited.
That's cool.
It's my
Are
first
you?
time.
Are
I've
you?
listened to podcasts,
Yeah. Which
but
ones do you listen
that's the
to?
first. I've listened to. Oh my gosh, it's about murder. Oh my goodness. My dad wrote a well, my dad wrote a porno.
Mm,
I'm like, that was one of them. And then I
yeah.
listened to another one that was all about sitting on a couch and different stories from the couch. And it was like just kind of everything about how to set up a space. It was all interior design based, funny
Yeah.
enough, just because I do like doing that. So it was all
I'm.
about that.
But I'm assuming you had searched that one out because you were like, okay, you were sort of like doing interior design, so you're like, okay, well, I'm going to find something that,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But other than that, I have no idea. Introduce me to the podcast world,
Well,
Will.
actually, I was going to ask you to introduce yourself, which I ask of every guest, basically, because there's only so much I can do. You, of course, know yourself more than I do, unless something is terribly wrong.
Nope, not at all. Okay, well, hi everybody. My name's Adriana Crivici. I am an actor by trade, and I love what I do. And that is, well, I also like real estate. My fiance and I have been working in real estate for the past 8 years.
Oh wow,
So I love doing home renos and all that fun jazz, which it hence the interior design and searching things out. And then what else? I'm originally from Vancouver. I live now in Ontario, and
oh,
I have a dog that I love so much. His name's Rocky, and that's me in a nutshell.
very very cool. I didn't know that you were originally from Vancouver. The things we assumed, like you know what I assumed? I don't know if you're gonna like this or not.
That's okay. You can go ahead and say it.
I assumed you were from like you were like born in downtown Toronto.
That's so funny. No, not
But
at
like
all.
that's
I
just a
was
complete just like assumption based off not a lot of information, you know.
totally well, and I will say that I think that I do give off a very type A personality, which I
Mm,
think is very reminiscent of people that are born and raised in Toronto. Like my best friend is born and raised in Toronto, and she's like type A business go-getter, like,
Yes.
and so it makes sense that perhaps
Yeah.
you assume that. That's what I assume, but also like a little bit jaded of the world. like I
Yeah.
maybe come across.
Huh. Because I was gonna say, like, okay, so not to compliment you too much, but so I was gonna like kind of add that you're like probably like the good parts of Toronto, because I feel like there's people that I know that are kind of like the bad part of Toronto, or the sort of, you know, like, yes, there is that sort of type A personality, but like the sort of two-faced, sort of superficial vibes that you don't, in my mind, give off. But to know that now you're a Vancouver girl, I did not expect, because I'm kind of imagining Vancouver sort of like chill, beanie hats, like, hey man, like,
That is exactly what it's like. But you know, I left Vancouver when I was 18. So I've spent most of my adult life developing in Toronto. So I think that that's probably why you didn't recognize that. I also don't really wear like nature on my sleeve. And a lot of people that are from Vancouver are very like, you know,
yes.
nature oriented. And it's not that I don't like nature. I love nature. It's just not something that I bring into my everyday.
So why did you leave Vancouver?
I left Vancouver to go to school. I, you know, just think that I needed to find my independence, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have done it in Vancouver. I don't think I knew that back in the time. At the time, I was like, I want to be closer to New York City. That was the conversation.
Right.
But in hindsight, 2020, I just think that because I come from a very Italian family, very traditional background, you know, inclusivity and family is a way of life. Whereas I think that I maybe wouldn't have been able to find myself within that confine. So I think it was a way out.
Interesting, because I feel like you could have had the mentality where it's like, oh well, I'm already here, and like I want to be an actress, and like LA is right there, so, and you know, Vancouver's this big movie town, so I guess the need to sort of leave and experience, I don't know, have like almost like the hero's journey, was that stronger than the ideas that Vancouver brought forth?
Totally. And at the time too, I wasn't interested in on camera acting so much as I was interested in musicals. And so knowing that New York was the hub of that,
Mm,
anything and everything to be closer to New York, but without having to move into the States, of course, because of visas and stuff like that,
yeah.
I was into. And so finding a school on the East Coast was really important to me. I also too thought for a long time that Toronto was like this even bigger city than Vancouver. So
Yeah.
hey, you know what? My young wee 18-year-old mind was just
I
like,
get it.
but yeah, so that's why I had came up
What
to Toronto.
what school did you go to?
I went to York.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And was the degree like musical theater, or?
it wasn't. It was a Bachelor of Arts, and it was in their acting conservatory. So it was more of a conservative classical theater base.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Cool. I mean, that's so I studied drama at Bishop's University, which was great. I really enjoyed it, but I've always kind of been, I've always had a bit of a slight jealousy towards people that get actual conservatory training, like sort of like classical training.
yeah.
Could you run me through that a little bit? How that went and what that was?
For sure. I mean, maybe I'm not the best person to run you through this because you know, I liked my time at university, but I almost wish that I had done something different with it now. But what did we do? Well, we kind of in the first year at York specifically, they do a kind of like a general year. So it's like all encompassing. You get the chance to experience the production side of things, creative devising theater. So starting from scratch all the way to more classical, read a play, break it
Hmm.
down, perform it. Um, and then there was also lots of other kind of factual based information in theater history. So that's year number one. Then you split up into more specifics in year two. So there's the conservatory program. There's what was devised theater. Now it's known, I believe, as creative ensemble, and then production. And then there's also like dramaturgy and tons of other, again, kind of create your own
Yeah.
ways as well. But yeah, so in my program, we started off just with self exploration, I would say, in second year. It was all about we did these things where you would wear a different hat and see how that would inform your body, kind of working from the outside in, and then also working from the inside out, developing more of our emotional place. So because I had this huge love for musical theater, I spent a lot of second year breaking down kind of the light, the positivity that I carry, and just trying to play with some sort of other sides, wrath, anger, with no success. With no success. Talk to me now, we'll have a different conversation about that, but yeah, I did not enjoy my second year at school. And then in third year, we spent time working on different styles of theater and different approaches. We took the Uta Hagen book and broke down their way of acting, or that kind of specific. We did Stanislavski, method acting, like all these different forms, which was really cool because it was showing you different approaches to how to break a script down, how to get connected, how to become present, all that kind of stuff. And then we also tried different styles of theater. So we did absurdist theater. We did some more classical theater pieces. We did Shakespeare. What else did we do? Oh my gosh, this is like 10 years ago.
Have you ever done clown?
No, we never did clown. Not at all, actually. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
We did some neutral mask work, but no clown. I don't think at any point. Actually, it's funny. I worked on a show after school where we got to do these little workshops, and I did a clown workshop there. That's my only taste of clown. I got my red nose, and I was like, oh my God.
How'd you find it?
Very cool. I love physical theater. I'm a big physical person to begin with. I talk with my hands and I make weird faces and I go. So I really enjoyed it. I don't necessarily think I'm the best at it, but I had so much fun doing it.
Yeah. I mean,
have you done it?
Yeah. Well, we did a musical, like we created our own musical, and the director, does the name Michael Kennard ring a bell?
It does not, no.
Okay. Anyway, he's like a part of like this sort of this clown duo, and they do these workshops and everything. But so we basically like, I guess, educated ourselves in clown, and that informed our musical. So the whole musical, like, it wasn't clown, but it had sort of like clown foundation. And we were doing all these like exercises I'd never done before that were like so eye-opening for me, because it was like all about truly expressing yourself, like true, you know what I mean? Like truly, as opposed to sort of like as opposed to make believe. And that was like such a complete 180 as to everything I'd been taught up until then. We would be doing like these super simple exercises, just like, like making contact, where essentially you just like go one by one in front of everyone, and you sort of like breathe in, breathe out while looking at everyone, and you're supposed to actually reveal how you feel actually. And it was so intense. Like, it sounds so simple, right? But like, it was so difficult for most people. And it's so terrifying. And just, I counted. We had at least one person cry every
of course
class, of course. And and then, like, no shame. That's honestly, it's beautiful. It's people actually revealing who they are.
Yes, totally. Speaking of that, I know this is kind of a tangent or not connected at all to university, but have you heard of the game?
Based on tangents, by the way, so I encourage you to go on tangents. Go for it.
My life is a tangent. I'm like, have you heard of the game We're Not Really Strangers?
No, what's this?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I heard about it from my sister, who started watching their videos, I believe on YouTube is where she first was introduced. But it's essentially this little red box of glory. It's 3 rounds of questions that you ask people. And the idea is that, at the very end, you're not strangers anymore, or that you have understood and had a connection, like a deep connection with somebody who you might not know. The one video that I watched was a lovely older woman and a younger gentleman. And, they just sat at these chairs in this public space and started answering questions. And one of the questions is, how are you really right now? Yeah. And it kind of, just seeing the 2 people go through this journey of getting to know one another, as soon as you said, just standing up in front of a crowd and really just having to be, so many people cry because we're putting on all these covers all the time on
absolutely
being certain ways and wanting to be perceived like X, Y, and Z. I'm from Vancouver, I'm from Toronto, right? The story continues. But that game is amazing, and I actually have it in the other room. You've got to check it out. Or at least check out the YouTube videos, because it's so eye-opening.
Yeah. No, man. Yeah, I'm trying to think like if that's something I would want to, because in my mind, my only resistance to it is like sort of like taking away the organic nature of finding more about people. But
Yeah.
I also think I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing, and those videos can be touching, where in general you see people be vulnerable. Um,
Yeah.
which is a nice thing. But before we continue, there's one thing I wanted to ask you before we
Yeah.
like truly launch into your life and everything and all your choices. Like if we go back to the beginning, like early days of a young Adriana, like what
Yeah.
were your first sort of like hopes, dreams, things you needed to do, values even, you know,
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this is
whatever
so
you're
funny.
comfortable with sharing.
Of course, of course. Um, I okay, this is I was convinced when I was 5 that if I could get my nails painted every 2 weeks and have fresh nail polish on, I would have made it. When I literally thought, I'm like, the 28-year-old version of me, the 30-year-old version of me will get her nails done every week. Because I was just saw these women that had these glamorous nails. They just looked so beautiful and put together. And so that was something that I really valued. Um, Obviously now I
I
know that
love
that's
that.
not necessarily the case, and there's so many other things attached to that and lockdown and whatever, but yeah, that was something that I always thought. I loved the idea of a woman that just looked put together, that
Hmm.
she had maybe gone through things. That doesn't discredit her life, but she was always able to maintain um kind of poise, grace, and kindness just with everybody. So those are things that I really value as a person. Um, I also value understanding people and their stories, because I think that everybody has a rational reason for doing everything in their life or lives.
Hmm.
Um, so really getting to understand people and why they may have done something that might seem outlandish, or why they did something that might seem self-deprecating or whatever it is. So understanding people is a big one.
Even from a young age, do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So
Yeah,
would you
definitely.
say you might have even been like the sort of the so-called sort of like old soul at age, 6, 7?
Would I consider myself an old soul? I probably wouldn't, but maybe thinking back on it, I might say I
Yeah.
was. You know
Well,
what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I think it's difficult to sort of like self-describe as an old soul. I feel like that's the type of thing that other people will
Put
say, and
you,
it's, yeah.
yeah,
But so would you say you were sensitive to people at a young age? Yeah.
definitely,
Okay, because I was gonna
definitely.
say, for like to me, the nails thing I find very interesting because, and without judgment at all, but I feel like that could have very much informed a decision to like want to go into like finance or something very full of like material stability and success. Yeah, exactly. So would you say it's the sort of this sensitive you had this sensitive nature at it from an early young age? Would you say that sort of helped steer the ship towards acting?
Definitely. Yep, 100%.
Interesting.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. I'm trying to think of other things that I valued as a child too, or that might have been present. I was always very curious. I still am. I was that kid that would push the big red button because they were curious to
Mm,
see kind of like what was there. I was also somebody that never slept. I'm like, there are 24 hours in a day and I want to see the world. So um yeah, that was always a big one. Even as a kid, I'm sure my mom would say that. She's like, you opened your eyes and then you never stopped, and then you opened your mouth and you never stopped talking.
were you like hyperactive as well? Or
I wouldn't say I was hyperactive. I mean, maybe I was. Again,
but nothing like, yeah,
but I would never had any sort of like clinical
diagnosis, yeah.
diagnosis of anything.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, probably I don't really have the best focus in the world. That's always something I've struggled with. So maybe in hindsight, there was something there that was never explored.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. What else did I value? I will say I did grow up doing very competitive dance. So I did value physical aesthetics and a certain look, which I think really hindered me. I think that was something that I valued because I was always the tallest, biggest girl in class.
Really?
I had a lot of insecurity that developed out of that. A lot of kind of unhealthy thought patterns about
Sure,
myself and stuff like that.
sure.
So that's not something I'm happy to admit, but it definitely was something I valued at a young
It's the
age.
truth. That's funny you say that, because again, like the things we never can tell from just, like I would never assume you were like the tallest, biggest girl in class,
Yeah.
so you were saying for a while you were.
Almost the entirety of my dance career, which I was like dance time as a dancer, which lasted from around age 5 or 6 is kind of when I started to get into it. I would say around 7, I got competitively minded, and it lasted till I was about 18 when I
Wow.
tore my ACL and had knee surgery. So that flipped my world on its head.
Mm.
But yeah, so I would say for that entire period, I was always the tallest, largest girl in class. And I vividly remember scenarios where it was like, and you're going to be a small, you'll be a small, these are like dance costume measurements. And she's like, I think we should go with an extra large. And I remember just being like,
What? Oh, that's
rush.
fucking heartbreaking. But okay, so I'm sorry. So did you go through like tremendous weight loss, or because I mean,
Thanks.
how the
Well,
hell are you
no,
next large?
no, okay, first of all, we're talking about spandex things that like
Okay.
when they stitch them together, they show up like this. And you're like, how is this supposed to be a top? And then you like squeeze your way into it. And it's like you become this like sausage. In hindsight, they're awful. The costumes that people put children in, it was so bad. And you know what? I don't think anything's changed, which is really bad. But
Mm.
um yeah, as I was always just tall. Like I went through puberty at 14. So I just sprouted. Like I think I'm 5'8.5" now,
Okay. Yeah.
173 centimeters, I think, somewhere in that
Sure.
world. But I have been this tall since I was like 13, 14. So
Wow.
as a
Okay.
girl
Yeah.
at that age, people were like, you should play volleyball. And here I am,
Yeah.
like, you know,
Did you try it, or
yeah. So I wouldn't say I went through tremendous weight loss by any means.
sorry, did you try volleyball? I know that's probably an annoying question, but
I definitely did. And it was definitely a good thing that I did not pursue it.
I mean, you also like you didn't really care for it either, right?
No, not
Okay,
at all.
that's good.
My siblings are both very athletic in nature, and it was always kind of like, that's their world.
Yeah.
They're going to do that. And so
Yeah.
I just didn't have an interest in it. I also, my hand-eye coordination is not very good, and neither is my hand-foot coordination. I'm a coordinated person, but when it comes to, having to hit a ball, I was not good at it.
But it's different with dance, where it's more of a like how what's the difference there?
I would say, first of all, there's often not a prop. It's not like you're really holding on to a ball or you're trying to go after a ball. I would say it's more fluid based,
Mm,
and kind of core driven or spinal driven. All the actions come out from the center of your body. Whereas, I guess you could argue the same thing for volleyball. It's just,
no, I get it. I understand. It's also, I mean, I'd like to think that maybe there's, I don't know, maybe you just weren't into the sport, and like there's something about dancing that you
exactly.
weren't much more about. And there's something I'm really curious about. So I feel like our high school selves, like we okay, so we all find our ways to sort of cope, right? Like to sort of find our little ways to be okay in that environment. Like I know I figured out at a fairly young age that my thing was going to be like, I'll try to be like the funny guy, because I desperately would have liked to be like the mysterious hot guy. But that seems so far away, and I wasn't like involved enough and good enough at sports to be like the hot jock either. So I was like, okay, I'll be the funny party guy. So I'm curious if like when you mentioned, you were the tallest girl,
Yeah.
how that fucked with your system.
I would say how did that fuck with my system? In many different ways. Oh my gosh. Body dysmorphia and thinking that I'm one size and I might be another size. I'm just so unaware. Even to this day, I'm like, I search for people who are reminiscent of my body to be like, oh, maybe that's what I look like, or maybe that's what I come across like.
Yeah.
So body dysmorphia is definitely one thing. I would say, I always wanted to be a wallflower. I wanted to blend in. I didn't want to stand out, even though
Hmm.
by nature I was obviously tall. So it's kind of, you can't really not stand out when you're the tallest female. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, So yeah, that I would say it was really big. I just would kind of try to make myself small.
Yeah, you were already sort of, you felt like almost negatively seen. So you're just like, okay, I just
Yes.
want to like remove myself. Can I just hang out in the back? Yeah, I feel like there's a in my from my childhood memories of like the tall girl, which the
Categories.
yes, well, I was gonna say like the archetype pops up at different moments, at school. But in general, it seems like the tall girl wants to sort of like uh stay in the back. Yeah, exactly, kind of quiet more. So that sucks.
Yeah, totally. Oh my God, it super sucked. Especially now thinking of all those years where I'm like, man, I wish you would have just grown some balls, girl. Like,
Yeah.
right. And I will say that's been a journey all through my 20s. And having
Mm.
just turned 30, now I can feel I say this and I mean it in the best way, like the weight of my age. Like I finally feel like I can stand up tall and I'm not afraid to stand up.
Yeah,
So that's taken, 15 years to dismantle, right? Like that's a
that's
lot of
crazy.
life.
Yeah, it is. And like,
Yeah.
and again, not to, I hope this doesn't sound too bad, but like you're so like you're so normal looking, like I know, yes, I get you're tall, but like we're the same height. So it's kind of crazy that fucked with you for like so long.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
my question was like, okay, I know, like, okay, so it's like stay in the back, because I know, like, my thing was like, okay, to be funny, sort of like to feel seen, but everybody needs to feel seen, right? So, what did you really only sort of like hang out and not say anything, or how were there other ways you sort of you used
Coped.
to get, yeah, to cope?
Um, Keep myself busy. I wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily say I adopted any sort of personality trait. I think, okay, well, maybe I was overly adaptable. That's probably what I would say is if someone was like, Adriana, hey girl, I'd be like, hey, what's
Right.
up? And if another person was like, we're studious today, I would just flip into, we are studious today. So I would say adaptability was the way that I coped,
Right.
by just making myself into whatever a certain circumstance needed versus,
Yeah.
again, saying maybe what I thought was
Yeah.
the best idea.
I do relate to that, because I feel like I definitely was that guy that like sort of jumped around every group and like, hey,
Yeah,
the cool guys are here, or hey man, how you guys doing? Nerdy types are here, and I'm like, hey, what's up? So you were
yeah.
also that kind of person in high school, especially?
100%. 100%. And yeah, and then again, just keeping myself busy in every area of my life, whether or not it was my dance life or my school life, which were very separate, or the musical theater that I eventually went into.
Yeah.
No life intermixed with another life, so that I was able to be a specific version of myself in each world. Um, Again, just a blendability, the not making too much of a statement. And then the couple times where I did make statements, it I just remember being like, that was the worst decision of my life. I'm like, no, no,
any
abort, abort.
any examples you'd be willing to remember and share?
An example of me, I would say, like having a boyfriend in high school. That was a big one. The gentleman that I dated through high school, I don't necessarily think was, he was so cool. He played lacrosse. Um, that was one situation that I got into, and then maybe realized, like, a year into this relationship, okay, is this actually something I'm enjoying, or am I just here because this makes me feel like I'm having a little bit more of a normal high school life?
Yeah.
Um, so that's definitely one scenario. And there were other scenarios too where I just remember being really rude, not because I wanted to be rude, but because I was being influenced by the group of people that I was being surrounded by.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Yeah.
think back to that now, and I have such a soft spot for people who get made fun of and who, because we've all felt it in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. And so I would say, yeah, there were scenarios that I prefer not to refer back to, but that I
Yeah.
was a
No.
complete and utter awful human being. And I'm like, why would I would never say that now. And just to feel like I had to say it in order to compensate for something or to compensate for the group that I wanted to appease.
I
Like,
know.
ouch, that's
Yeah,
gross.
yeah, I feel that. Like I get sometimes even at night, if I can't sleep, sometimes I'll get a little flashback of like, oh my God, I was a fucking bully. Like I went through my entire high school thinking I was so misunderstood, and I was like oh no, like they're the bullies and I'm the sort of like, nobody's in my head. Like, and then I said so much awful shit. At
Yep,
different, it's such a horrible thing but I think that's everyone, right? Or at least most people.
totally. And looking back on it now, I, I can happily say that I'm a much nicer person now.
Yeah.
And we're just really misunderstood, and getting to work with the high school students that we had the pleasure of working with, just seeing where they're at mentally and some of those comments that come through and from this, like, we're at such a raw, very vulnerable state at that age, that I'm like, wow, I was so easily manipulated
Yeah.
into, and some of them were maybe driven from my own insecurities too. It's not that I'm blaming all the people around me for this. I definitely made awful decisions on my own too. But I think that they've made me a better, more well-rounded person now looking back on it.
You mean what exactly made you a better, more well-rounded person?
Just the being a little bit of a mean person through my high school life, and not necessarily, pardon us for the brief interruption.
That's fine.
He's got it. I just wanted to make sure it is, the door has been gone. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I think that having gone through all of I'm just trying to wrap my head around where we were at. Sorry about that. Yeah, just having gone through and being a bad person and being very influenced and easily manipulated now has made me have a better view of what I respect in people and how I want to be seen now. And also not being as easily influenced. Like, again, growing into being 30 and deciding this is what I want, this is what I think is good, and standing by that versus otherwise. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. And so one little thing I wanted to mention, I don't think we actually said this, but it could be worth pointing out that, so how we met is through a Health Canada program where we worked from home, and we gave presentations essentially via Zoom or Teams or whatever to students across the country. I actually like Teams. The one I hate is Google Meet, but whatever. And okay, so, and I think, so why I wanted to do this podcast so much is because, like, working with Adriana, like, so you were just a complete burst of like new energy, and like, holy shit, like somebody that cares this much, like I wasn't ready for that. So what I'm curious is, have you always been this sort of like, I don't want to say bubbly, because bubbly makes it sound like you're kind of like superficial and I guess more like invested. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, always. If I'm in something and I'm doing something, I'm either there or I'm not there.
Yeah.
And it is really noticeable. If I don't necessarily care or want to do something, I don't do a very good job of hiding it. But when I choose to put myself in circumstances, especially, where we found ourselves, I'm in it, to be there for sure.
But I'm assuming were you as in it for vaping as for the one on the opioid crisis?
I think that, okay, no, I can agree with you on that. No, I don't think anybody was. But I signed on originally for the opioids tour. It was, the vaping thing was a surprise addition. And I think that with the elevated format, I could kind of get more onto that vein of things versus just the photos. I also felt like I couldn't get as invested because we got added into the vaping thing so late, and then the program was going to come to an end for this, round of it. So I don't necessarily think that I got the opportunity to really understand the impact of vaping, whereas I, in my life all the time, know the impact of opioids. I've seen it. So I think it's one of those things that I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to connect, but if you really want to know, no, I wasn't disconnected to vaping.
Okay, that's fine. Actually, okay, so again, just to be super clear, so okay, the Health Canada programs we were doing, one was called No More, KNOW, that was on the opioid crisis. The other one is called Consider the Consequences, which we basically, no one on the team enjoyed doing, really. It's on vaping, and I agree with you that the opioid one was powerful So let's talk a little bit about that one before we go back into sort of like your life and I guess career. Um,
Cool.
so okay, so you mentioned that you have basically people that were affected by the crisis.
Definitely. I think you can just feel it and see it. I know people that have struggled so much over the last few years, um, just through mental health
Mm-hmm.
reasons from this pandemic and looking for forms of entertainment and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have a friend who's like basically undergoing right now. She's essentially struggling with substance abuse. And it's not like this big dramatic thing of like, oh my God, like she's coping with it and it's a regular thing. And she texts me once in a while and we
Okay.
check in. And I mean, I like she has somebody, she even, I think she mentions she has like somebody that's like an addictolog, like basically like someone who's like, who specializes in addiction. And
Yeah.
so that person is like, I guess, specially trained with that particular part of it. And so yeah, so
Amazing.
yeah, like, and it was cool to sort of, well, not cool, like it's weird to say that it was cool to have somebody in
I
my life
know.
where but
Yeah.
it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Oh yeah. And talking to the Niagara Youth Advisory Committee on the subject, getting to hear like, people in my neighborhood, in my area, and having her say that the numbers have jumped from 2020 to 2021 from
Yeah,
like 33 approximate overdoses to death to 55. Like that is, you can just
Jesus, yeah,
hear
man,
it, see it, feel it. There's
yeah,
this weird energy in the world. And
yeah,
yeah, I did one specific class with a school out in Digby, Nova Scotia. Um, and I spent 53 minutes after our hour talking to the vice principal of the school and the guidance counselor at the school, because 5 children in the class had had personal experiences with addiction and substance use, including one 13-year-old who was already post recovery from an opioid overdose. And they had like some odd 7, and I don't know the exact numbers, but 7 people in their local school catchment area who had just overdosed from fentanyl in like,
yeah.
a 2-week period. So when you go into a situation, I didn't necessarily think I would ever get to that level talking to these students, talking to these classes. With only 1 hour, I was like, oh, this will be, I thought it might be easy. Like I went in with a little bit of okay, I know how to present something, let's talk about it. But hearing the gravity of how this has affected people, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, to be 13, like you're just a teenager.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's truly like like one experience that I had like during the first tour. We were out west, right? We were in Kelowna, BC, and we were like presenting in that festival. And
Yes.
so the night the day we had a day off, and on that night we went to to see to go to the show at the festival. I forget who was playing. Like, it was like this DJ. We're like really enjoying the night. The next day we go to our tent to set up and everything, and we fucking find out that morning that a girl died from fentanyl, like at the show.
What?
We were there. Yeah.
Yeah, see, like that just is enough influence for you to be like, wow, I would
Yeah.
like to make sure people know about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And and sometimes something I think about is like, so this program that we've done, that's under that's basically in the industry of brand ambassador work, right? And often, like most often, brand ambassador stuff is like, a car show, giving away, flyers, whatever, like giving. And now we're like in the middle, like somebody's dead. It's like it was such an intense thing, and it's so
Oh
emotional and
my
so important.
God.
And you're like, this is the same industry as the Red Bull girls, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's tough
Oh
to
my gosh.
sometimes wrap my head around.
Yes, I hate the title brand ambassador. There was a few lovely moderators that would introduce, oh, and this is Adriana, our brand ambassador. And I remember being like,
It
oh,
does, yeah, it doesn't work for, yeah, that's fair. Like host or whatever is much more apropos than like, I'm representing Health Canada. Like it's, yeah,
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 especially with a circumstance and conversation that just has so much gravity to it. But
so
hey, you
much
know what?
gravity.
That's, I guess, but too, what are words? As soon as people get into the presentation, or if they took the time to listen, they would realize that it's not that, right? Like the questions that you had to answer and the information that I was delivering, we were delivering tandem as a team. Like, if you know what brand ambassadors can be and what this was, you'll see that this is, we're just stretching the vein of what a brand ambassador can be.
True. Honestly, no, absolutely. But at the same time, it's funny. I think there's somebody that there's a BA that I worked with who also is like studied into social work. And she's like, what you're doing right now is pretty much social work. Like,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how true that is. Maybe she was like sort of exaggerating but especially like on in field, during the festival where that girl died, everything that felt very social worky because it was very on the spot, people kind of freaking out. And I kind of felt bad about this. Like there's a kid who kind of came up to me, to us, and he was like, "Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Like it means so much." And which was really like touching and moving. But I think he thought we were like volunteering. He's like, you're like the fact that you're taking the time to do this. I'm like, well,
it's a job.
The job, but that's just a little detail. Yeah, don't worry about that. I have a Good Samaritan law story that I'd like to share.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you have any stories that are, anything that you'd like to share, feel free to. So I did not know about, so the Good Samaritan law, as we often say in our presentations, is that if you call 911 in case of an overdose, whether it be opioids or anything else, then you cannot have drug possession charges if there's drugs lying around. So anybody listening, we want you to call 911 right away if you suspect that somebody is having an overdose. So my story is that a couple years ago, I was hanging out with a friend and we decided to partake in some GHB. Have you ever done what's called juice?
No.
Okay, so no. Also every time I bring it up, I like cringe because I know like whenever I say like the letters GHB, it's like automatically date rape drug, right?
Okay,
like,
yes.
So there's the pill format, which is horrific, but if you administer it yourself, it could be like a really nice buzz. Like it's
experience.
Exactly. It's a nice little warmth and it's a nice experience. So my problem is that we were doing it and I made a terrible mistake of doing more when our first dose was enough because it wasn't like kicking in. So we're like in our drinks. I was like, okay, well, let's do more. Like, oh, why aren't we feeling anything yet?
Yeah.
So put it in, drink. We go to the bar where so it's kind of complicated. Like this friend had like recently kind of like been fired from that bar. I still worked there, but like we were going to go there to finish off our night.
Like and familiar environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And thank God we went there because once we got there, the symptoms we talk about all the time, basically like slow, weak or no breathing, loss of essentially consciousness.
Her. Okay.
I basically got really buzzed. It's as if I was like really drunk. Yeah. Still kind of aware and conscious and everything, but like I just have this intense warmth in myself, but I'm like I was in no state to handle shit. But my friend was like pretty much she was sort of just not really breathing and just so my colleagues essentially were like, holy shit, what the fuck is happening? And I was kind of like freaking out, like, oh, I don't understand, like what the fuck? I was like, well, we did this, and they called an ambulance and they came to pick her up, and I was told to basically leave, which I'm glad I did. But I kept texting like, hey, is she okay, blah blah blah, and turns out she was fine. Like she just basically, I don't know if they did a stomach pump, but I forget what they did, but they took care of her and she was okay. But the point is, like, I had no idea that the Good Samaritan law existed at that time. And here's what scares me is, had we stayed at my place, not knowing that law exists, I truly would like to think that I would have called 911.
But you don't know.
I mean, you don't fucking really know. And So that's my little story.
That's amazing. Would you say that that's one of the reason that like you started doing the tour? Like, was this in between? I don't remember. This was before you started the tour.
That was actually like quite before the tour. So here's the thing. I got fired from that bar because of that incident, which I completely understand, and that's fair. I did want to quit that bar anyway. And then I did another gig. It was actually like this, I think it was like the Tim Hortons app, which was fine.
Yeah.
And then I got the Health Canada gig. Oh, and here's, oh my God, I forgot about this. I was really stressed out that for some reason they would, I guess, like in my, I don't know if I put my I don't think I put that bar in my references, but I think I was scared that they would ask like, yeah, I think
history?
I should have just got, something like that, like my history, my CV, and be like, oh, so what happened there? And then like, oh, well, I quit, but what's the true story? Well, I got fired for, doing GHB, and like, oh, like, do we really want this guy to be? But that never happened. And here I am talking about it on a podcast.
You're like, oh, here we are, guys.
They can fire me now if they want. Too late now, suckers.
It's too late. Yeah, sorry. Wow, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
do you have any scary stories like that?
I don't have any scary stories like that. When I had knee surgery, I was prescribed oxycodone, and I took, I think, 4 days worth of pills, and I was messed up. Literally,
I fucking high.
It's powerful stuff, man. And so these are the 2 stories, again, not by no means anywhere near what you went through, but I spilt a glass of, my mom was the best mother in the world. She was bringing me food because I couldn't walk. Obviously I had my legs raised and all that. And, this was post having ACL reconstructive surgery. And she brings me a large glass of milk. And so I just remember sitting on like my childhood couch with this glass of milk. And then I do not know what happens, but the milk all over me, everywhere.
Oh my God.
And when they say like, don't cry over spilt milk, I was freaking bawling. I was in hysterics because I had spilled this milk, and I don't know, I couldn't even tell you what I thought it was or what had happened. I was freaking out over this milk that was all over me and all over the couch. And then I also vividly remember playing with like a teddy bear. Like I had this teddy bear in front of me, and I was making the teddy bear dance, and I thought it was like the world's funniest thing. And I sat there for maybe an hour, like literally just like pulling the arms side to side. I just remember being so not in touch with reality.
Yeah.
That I stopped taking it after a few days because I was loopy. I was literally just not even on planet Earth.
What was the initial injury?
Torn ACL.
How did that happen?
Tobogganing.
Ouch. Fucking hell.
I know. People are like, oh, you were taboozing. You were doing this. No, I was literally tobogganing, and we went down a steep hill in an area where we should not have been tobogganing. Like that led onto a street. Like it was 2:00 in the morning. So, and it was my childhood, like best friend and my brother and her brother. And, we just landed on a bad spot, and my brother, it was like my friend Courtney in front, me in the middle, and my brother in the back. And we just went down the hill. I went forward and my leg went right up the side. Popped. Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. Was this like a drunken escapade or more?
No, see, that's what people mean taboozing. Yeah. No, it wasn't.
Okay,
there was no alcohol involved at all.
Because you'd think 2 a.m.,
Yes, I know. But it was in Vancouver, we don't get a lot of snow. And so this was like, oh my gosh, it had just snowed. There was nobody on the streets, which is why we chose to do it in a very not safe area. And so we're like, let's do it. And then we got home, and my mom was talking to our friend's mom. And I remember jumping on my leg being like, it feels a little bit weird. It just kind of like popped, but it's okay. And there we go.
Yeah. So all this to say, indeed, these opioids are something. And it's even like your experience. Would you almost say that you were kind of like lucky that you got out of it? Because
for sure. Yep. Yeah, because you never really know. And clearly I was at a stage where I was totally unaware. And had I, have been in charge of my own decisions, I probably would have kept taking it because the doctor had said, take it for X amount of days. And I was at home with my parents. So I had that influence of them saying, hey, like, this is can we try other pain medication? Like, you're not
Oh,
necessarily responding super well. So I wasn't in control of my own situation. But had I been, I definitely would have continued to take it as the doctor had said, right?
fuck, man. And
Yeah.
that's how a lot of these stories happen.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, too, I think that, and I know I said this a million times through the presentation, you probably heard me say it like a broken record, but when I was back in high school, there was no education on the subject, none.
That's true.
And I was very active in my high school community. Like, if there was the education, I would have been that student that would have seen it or heard it. But a poster on the wall is not something that people are going to read. So I think that the fact that Health Canada has stepped behind this to say, hey, this is something that's happening, I love being on the forefront of that.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Fully agree that we did not get anything on this in our when we were in high school. Although I'm trying to, we've often gotten the question, when did the fucking crisis actually start? And I don't really know. Do you know?
There's rumors that there was concern around 2016. That
Yeah.
was when they started to notice like high levels of consumption. I know
Okay.
in BC, my uncle is a firefighter out there, and he was very aware of the opioids that were being consumed and just the unhealthy drug habits in
Yeah.
Vancouver. And I vividly remember him getting into more conversation around 2016.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if it was there's an official start date, but I think just from, over prescription, like people over
Yeah.
prescribing the drugs and us not necessarily knowing the effects long term, this is what happened. And so this connects me into the vaping thing, right? Like, we don't really know a lot about the consequences of vaping. That was what the presentation touched on. And so, maybe it's good that we're getting ahead of the conversation now,
Yeah.
because we didn't with opioids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think I don't, it's maybe we're being really
You
unfair
hated
on
the
vaping.
vaping presentation.
It's just especially because I'm fucking stuck with the French one that's still the simple ass version one, and which is like ridiculously simple and easy, and I feel bored doing it, and like I find
Oh
it tough
no.
to sort of like fight against my own boredom for the students, But I agree that maybe it's good that we're like kind of talking about it early, and maybe you're right. We're gonna see later on. But I'll be honest, there's especially I'd done the vaping presentation in person a couple times.
Yeah.
And there's one especially like one tour that like I jumped on for like 2 weeks. And I'll be honest, I have never wanted to vape as badly as during those 2 weeks. Because I'm
Really?
like, well, not like truly, but just talking about it all day and be like sort of being like, implying that don't do it, because we don't actually say don't do it, but like it's heavily implied.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, man. It feels kind of just a couple puffs, man.
It tastes like cotton candy, man. Like all the flavors.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And there's something like it has been shown to be like better than cigarettes. So
True. Yeah. I don't know if it was you. It might have even been, was it you and I that did the class, like with the students that were into age 20, like they were 20, 22, they were a little older. It had a vast range.
I don't think it was me because I don't remember doing vaping with you. But
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Because again, you would have done more of the French presentations.
yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing because, at that age, there was a group of people in class that were legally allowed to get the substances, right? So we were in such different dialogue because a couple of them had cigarette and nicotine addictions through cigarette use. And so they were actually using it on their journey away from cigarettes. And so the conversation wasn't necessarily vaping's unknown, it affects your brain development, It was more, that's a really good decision that you've adjusted into this vaping, and hopefully you can live without vaping eventually, but in the meantime you've done yourself a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, honestly, that's I would fucking love doing a class like that, because you're right, it's such a different dynamic. And by the way, just getting a complete flash, that's kind of going to make a bit of a link between like a crazy jump back to us touching on vulnerability. Check this out. This is so fucking weird that this just popped in my head. So one weekend I joined a vaping presentation. I'm just standing around like a fucking idiot in that maze, because we had like a maze set up, which is kind of cool, but every employee or brand ambassador had to like stay around like a specific area and sort of like, hey, whatever vaping. Anyway, the point is, there's a man who shows up, and we just, I don't know, we just start talking, and we end up having like this probably like 30 to 40 minute conversation on like fathers and sons. And it was like such an epic conversation, just on like, because he was talking about like his relationship with his son, and I kind of talked about like the relationship with my dad, and I just didn't expect that conversation at all in that kind of environment of like, so, hey, like whatever, vaping, and here comes this man, and we just sort of naturally start talking, and I don't know, I felt like we were expressing our true selves and some real shit in an environment that typically does not inhabit that. Yeah, exactly. So my question for you is, have you ever kind of, okay, so in the world of BA, in the world of brand ambassador shit or whatever, I feel like that's probably my biggest gripe often will be like the sort of brandy, superficial nature of it. How have you dealt with that across the jobs?
That's a great question. How have I dealt with that?
Maybe you haven't, and that's okay.
No. By nature, I speak in a really colloquial way. And a lot of times there's kind of a formality to the speech that they encourage, that brands will encourage, which I understand that, maintaining, especially I've worked for like Ferrari, for example, and there's like a very high level of speech that's needed, and Jaguar and Land Rover and that kind of world. But I tend to go against that usually. And I talk to people just as people. And I love to ask people questions in that sort of environment and kind of make it all about that person. So that's why I tend to combat the superficiality.
That makes a lot of sense.
I also, sorry, what was that?
I was just saying that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because I think if you just talk to people as people and keeping in mind the terminology, that's not to say I, don't do my job, but at the end of the day, I've done speeches and stuff like that for Honda for a number of years. And they always write it in this way that's like the new Honda Civic, 2-liter turbo, Earth Dreams engine. And I'll just say, guys, this is an awesome car. Check it out. This is what you've got to know about it. These are the facts. This is why it's important. This is who would use it. And so I think by making it more about the people that I'm talking to versus making it about the message, tends to combat the superficiality for sure. Because people just feel like they can ask you questions. It fosters an environment for a dialogue versus this is what we're talking about.
Well, I also do want to give you a shout out because you did something that I still can't truly wrap my head around. So we have like the given text for our presentations, and I don't understand how the fuck you would go on this like insane monologue that I don't know if you took the time to write it yourself, or I'm assuming you're kind of going on improv. You've got like sort of like mental bullet points, but holy shit, you're touching on everything that needs to be said, but you've completely changed the entire thing. How the fuck did you do that?
I don't know, Will. I have no idea. I like to talk. So having practice doing a lot of talking, I think is what did it. I also I don't know. I have a knack for finding the bullet point. This is something I even do in my presentations with Honda. Maybe I've just had lots of practice.
You're good. You're really good. Cause I thought I was decent at that. And
you are good at that.
Well, I mean, I did the presentation a couple times, like the same one you did, but I mean, maybe because I only did it a couple times, but like I still fucking relied on what was there because it felt like a crutch I needed. But it felt like you could have just, I don't even know if you had the text in front of you. I don't think you did. What? How the fuck did you do it without the text in front of you?
I started with the text in front of me. So I did work with the text there for a while, and then I'd slowly less and less start clicking through it because I'm like, oh, I know what we're saying here. And I don't know. I have no clue.
It's a superpower. Like I'm not blowing smoke, honestly. Like it was really crazy to watch because I'm like, she's just completely, it's nothing. The text that I'm seeing is like she's touching on everything that needs to be said, but like you're completely writing something different, and it was dope.
Thanks, man.
Pleasure.
I appreciate that. I really like to bring text alive. And I think that in those sorts of, in like as a brand ambassador, they're oftentimes hiring you because of what you're bringing or what you're, and so my approach was kind of charismatic and it's colloquial. It's like, let's talk about things. I want to get this point across to you, but I hate the concept of being a teacher. I like to just be an educator, which leaves space for conversation. And so, I mean, this happened, I know, with you and I in class, but it happened so many times where students would just pipe up in the middle and say like, excuse me, miss, I have a question. Or they would get their teachers to ask a question. Like, I like it to be a back and forth, but I don't know how I make up.
That's okay. If maybe you don't want to jinx it, and maybe I think you just have this. I think you have the capacity to like retain what needs to be said, and you just sort of you add in the things you want to add in, and somehow you make it all work. Whereas most of us really use that crutch. So bringing us a little bit back to acting now. So you get to 18, you're a tall girl, you're in the back, you're shy. I'm assuming. Are you shy or not really shy?
I'm not shy. I'm pretty extroverted. I was shy as a child, but I'm pretty extroverted. Like I'd like to talk to people. I'm a people person.
But that's what I meant. I mean, like in high school, were you shy or shyer?
Definitely shyer.
Okay. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
All right. You're right.
You're dancing. You sprain your something. You sprain your
left knee.
Your left knee. So then what happens at that point?
At that point, I was right about to go into, I think it was second year of university, which was starting the conservatory program. So I had spent a year, I was back on Christmas break in December after doing some time at school.
So actually, hold on a second, just before you continue. Okay, I guess maybe I'm like insane and I fucking love like sort of seeing timelines and shit. But okay, so sprain your left knee. At that point, did you already know what you were going to go into for university?
Yes.
Okay. So you, as planned, you went to York.
Yeah.
From there. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Totally. So that kind of happened. It's, the timelines are so blurry, but I would have done one semester of university at that point. So still in the general year.
Yeah.
And it was like December 28th or something like that I tore my ACL, but I didn't know that I had torn it until much later. So I went back to school and continued the latter half of university. And I was there for the year that York was on this obscene strike. It was like 96 days or something ridiculous. So our year was all torqued and twisted and shifted. But yeah, and then I went for surgery in the summer. So that's kind of bing. Okay. And then I went to surgery. And so after surgery was when I went into the conservatory program, because that's when I would have specialized. Okay. And that's when I started the 3 years in the conservatory.
Yeah.
And
okay. So you alluded to something that I find very interesting. You said second year was not good. I'm assuming because you seem to imply that like your personality seemed to like be very much confronted. Now, am I wrong in imagining? I'm like imagining the sort of like teacher being like, more vulnerability, Adriana, like the sort of like, we want you to cry more. Is that
totally?
Was that what?
That was exactly it. Yeah, there was a distinct moment where they were like, "You're not allowed to sing," and then they're like, "You're not allowed to listen to musical theater." And I had to watch. Oh my God, Corey will tell you this. I had to watch the Antichrist movie. That was like one of the kind of exercises that I was put through just to kind of like explore the dark world. It's not that I don't have a dark side. It's just not something that I wear on my sleeve all the time. And they were just trying to see it. They wanted to see more of that, I guess, to see if I was even able to do it.
Because what I find, what I'm trying to wrap my head around is that because you were sensitive to people, right? So you're empathetic and everything. And in my mind, if you have that, then you can kind of more easily go into the sort of dark stuff. But maybe I'm like confusing two different things.
No, I think on average, a very sensitive human being does tend to have the ability to span all sorts of emotions. And like I said, like I did feel all of those emotions. It's just not something that I brought into any of my work. It was
Right.
that those sorts of colors of me were something that were really private. And if I
Yeah.
wasn't going through them alone, maybe the only person that saw them was Corey, if
Right.
that. It was just, it wasn't something that I was about to put on display, especially because, you know, not to say that musical theater is not something that shows all of these colors, but
The
in
cliche
music,
is
the
that it's
cliche is that they're happy, right? And they're bright. And
yeah.
I wanted that world, that Broadway, that Rockettes, that dance. And so it wasn't something that the full circle wasn't the full circle of spectrum of emotions in my craft was not something that I thought I needed at the time.
So
So it was, I'm like, I don't want to show you.
did you end up showing them?
Um, well, they have the ability to ask you to leave the program at certain times throughout the year, and I was never asked to leave. Therefore, I'd like to think that I did show them the colors. That's a good thing.
Honestly, Adriana, the number of people that I've heard basically were booted out, quit, whatever from conservatory, like it feels like to survive is the main the main
Check
goal.
mark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I don't necessarily think I fully understood them myself, but I did put myself in more circumstances where I needed to be. I'm trying to think. I did Crackwalker by Judith Thompson, I think is the playwright. That was the scene that I was given. And so she's a person with a slight disability, and that kind of showed a different side.
What was the scene? What was the
oh my gosh. What was the scene? She was talking to another female character, and I don't remember. They were in dialogue about sleeping with somebody. And all I remember is at the very end of the play, I believe she puts a baby in the oven. It's been so long since I've talked about it, but the character, it was just so distorted and so not like Broadway, which is how I would have normally gone into things. So I think that was kind of what they needed to see, was that even that I was just willing, because I think for a long time it was just, you know, the plastered on smile of like happy.
Yes.
And two, I think that at that point in my life, especially because I had just had this knee surgery and this like career in life as a dancer that I had imagined was also being stripped away. It was already hard enough to just go into class and be like, hey, and then we're in this like physical dance class, and the physicality that I was used to do, I wasn't able to do at all. So I think that I don't necessarily know if they really acknowledged the difficulty of maybe what I was going through, and how just showing up was already a challenge to begin with. I don't know if that answers your question again on another lovely tangent.
No, it kind of does. Hold on a second. So wait, because you had recovered from the surgery, but basically you're saying that like the injury affected your physical. Okay,
I actually hadn't recovered. So I had the surgery in July. So by the time I went back to school, I was actually just finishing up using crutches.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And you were doing all this dance, like in movement work, in pain?
Yes. In pain, A, and B, still going to physio. Like I was going to physio actively, but also not doing the exercises that I should have been. The recovery process could have been a lot quicker.
Ouch.
But just that, and going to school and being told, you know, be sad. I was like, I'm already going through an identity crisis. Jesus Christ.
And I'm assuming you were dead set on going to school at that point, like, because the idea of like kind of taking more time off while you recover.
So with the program, I was already on the waiting list to get in. So they accept only, I think it was 12 people into the class, and I was number 14. So I was second on the waiting list. And I was like, I got into this program. I fought to get into this program. I'm not going to this program. So I remember sending emails to all of my instructors and professors saying, hey, you know, I'm going to be there. I might look a little different than when you first initially invited me into the program, but I'm going to push through and I will do the best that I can. And they were really understanding with that. But yeah, that's.
So, okay. And then I'll move on from this. It's just because I'm like, I don't know. I'm also imagining, you know, when I was studying drama and everybody else coming in, everyone's got their own shit. But, so because you mentioned again that you like, yeah, it wasn't a good year, but like, was there a way where that sort of being so confronted, looking back, you could have been like, yeah, I really grew from that, or
Oh, for sure.
okay,
Yeah.
do you
Sorry,
feel
keep going. I'm just like 100% yes.
like, are you kind of saying that like in the moment you were very confronted to it and it was super hard and you even feel like you failed, but like looking back, you're like, that was so important that they gave you that dark scene and that they pushed you to do shit that you weren't accustomed to. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I don't necessarily know if I grew as an actor because I was so resistant to doing all of the exercises and projects and presentations. I thought it was just crazy. Like I wanted to go and listen to Spring Awakening later on and sing my heart out to the lyrics of, the gorgeous lyrics of that score. But I grew as a person because I felt like I had the ability to say no. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. Like I'm going through other things on my own. Yeah. There was so many things that were going on in that year that I just remember. I definitely learned from it, but it's all such a blur because it was
Yeah.
all so frustrating and hard and confusing, and again, like total identity shift.
Mhm.
So I definitely grew. I don't think I necessarily grew as an actor. I mean, they
Sure.
could be combined, but yeah.
Okay. So you graduate York, and
Yeah.
did you, like, I'm assuming perhaps 80% of young graduates, myself definitely included, did you have the lovely, I don't know, 6 to 12 month period of like hell of like post graduation, just bleak fucking darkness?
What happened? I remember what I had expected post university life to look like, and what it looked like was
Mm,
so different. I had such high expectations on, getting an agent, booking a show, they write this fantasy life that they don't necessarily, they educate you that it doesn't happen to everybody, but I don't think I really digested that. Um, I was really lucky to, in tandem with my last year of school and going into that, I was working at Lululemon,
hmm.
like really, really a lot.
Okay.
And so that environment fostered goal setting, growth, trying new things. It was every week there was a new class you could take, new people you could meet. And so
Dope.
yeah, I definitely went through hell, but what my hell looked like was that I was calling myself an actor, but I was actually working retail, and I was really doing like a really good job of working retail. But at the time I was convinced that like, this is life, man. But looking back on it, I'm like, okay, so you were an employee of a retail brand and you were pretending you were an actor.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's also, I mean, just that specific subject of like, can I call myself an actor? Like, when do I have permission to call myself an actor? What do I? That's such
Yeah.
a like, we definitely don't teach that, and most people, I don't know when we figured that out.
Yeah.
I guess that's an individual decision, but I think one thing I'd like to point out is, seems like not a bad day job. That if you're saying that like it taught you sort of like goal setting and sort of this environment that fostered some kind of positive
Yeah.
thinking and positive, that's amazing. Because I think most people's perception of a day job is like this barren, bleak, terrifying gray office of like
9 to 5, like, hey.
full of like just pure despair. So so did you expect that at Lululemon, or did that happen naturally?
I had a girlfriend who again suggested that I get a job there just based off of my personality. She was like, "Oh, I think that the company would love you. So come in for an interview." Um, yeah, I agree with you. I'm very lucky that I got into that company. They helped me mentally in so many different ways, especially
Wow.
like going to so many auditions. I don't know what the company is like to work for now, so I can't speak for it now, but as like, a 23-year-old, 22-year-old, it was really nice to be around these people that were actively crushing their goals, because it made you ask yourself, what do I want out of life? Why do
Yeah.
I want this? And also it really helped with physicality. Like we were given certain number of classes to go to per week that were given to us by the company. We had benefits that were provided to us. We had opportunities to invest in the Lululemon stock at a young age with a portion of our paychecks going there. Like they really fostered. And so, getting in there, I started when I was 18. I worked there. No, not 18. Would have been, I think I was 21, maybe. I can't remember.
Freshly graduated or?
Freshly, yeah. During school, actually. I started during one of the summers. And then I think it was during the summer of third year. And then I worked on Sundays, which was my only day off kind of through fourth year, just to get a little bit of income going. But yeah, oh my God, what an amazing place to be in. And something that really matched with me as a person. Like, I think that I could look back at those years and say, those were the deepest, darkest times of my life, because I was doing not 1 ounce of what I liked.
Sure.
I was doing a 9 to 5, but like I had no holidays, I'm selling people stretchy pants. Like you could look at it in so many bad ways, but I really think that I was very lucky to fall into a company, and there were so many amazing, influential people that were part of my time there that I'm like, wow, I was lucky.
Because you mentioned like goal setting, like I'm curious, like what kind of people were achieving what goals? Because it could have been like a very sort of, I don't know, like, yes, the CEO this week, bought more stores. It's like, great, but like, I'm just a cog in the machine.
Yeah. So the goals we actually did goal setting sessions. So at our staff meetings, they have this amazing form. There was a 10-year vision. So they guide you through kind of a guided meditation where you document what you see your life like in 10 years. So you picture, like for me, it was, I want bright windows. I want, at that time, I wanted kids before I was 30. So I wanted to have 1 or 2 children at the time. And I just remember beach house rings true. I wanted fresh air. I wanted white curtains to be blowing in the wind, whatever. Anyway, so you create this 10-year vision. And then on the side, there was 3 categories. I think it was health, career, oh my gosh, and home life maybe, or personal. It was like health, career, job, and personal, something like that. And so then there was 5-year goals, 10-year goals, 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year. And so then you're actively writing. So it could be, and they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic. Wow. Yeah. And so it was thorough. Like this was like an hour and a half session that they'd walk you through, right?
And
it was amazing.
They weren't mad at you if like you wrote down that like one of your goals was like, I want to be not working here in 6 months or something?
No, not at all. Because they wanted because the idea is that for people to be happy coming to work, they have to know they're working towards something greater.
Wow.
So there was never any criticism. There were so many different ways that you could leave and come back to the company. I left and went back to Lulu for like a span of 5 years. They also gave you at the time opportunity to travel. So I could work in Toronto, work in Vancouver, work in Toronto, work in Vancouver when I was going back and forth. So it was amazing. And yeah, they obviously weren't happy if you got there and you left before your 3-month probation, but right. I mean, people were writing things like, I want to work at the London Lululemon store. I want to complete a 5K. I want to, like, one of my goals was I want to have a certain number of houses by a certain age. I want to exercise 5 times a week. Like there was.
Wow. I see what you mean now. Yeah. That's fucking crazy. Cause when we think of a sort of 9 to 5, you're just your regular day job. We don't think of that kind of stuff. And that is really that's really great, honestly, because one thing, I don't know about you, but as an independent contractor, artist, whatever, I fucking would love some structure. Like I would love somebody being like, all right, here's the playground, we give you a good amount of space to play in, but like here's everything you need in that playground.
For sure. And that's exactly what they provided at a time in my life where I really, really needed it.
Yeah.
So, yes, I was selling people stretchy pants and people assessed me because of what size I was. And people are like, you're a 12 and you're a 6 and you're everything. There's a lot of really not great things that come with working in retail, but and the environment wasn't always bliss and gorgeous and happy, but there was a few fundamental things that helped shape me as a human being, and things that have stuck with me from when I started to now. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm super thankful, and getting into stocks and having that sort of financial side of things come up.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You could choose whether or not I think it was 3, 6, or 9% of your paycheck went towards that. I wasn't in a place where I was thinking about my future finances. I was just like getting out of school, for God's sakes. I was trying to be an actor, folks. So it's yeah.
So after Lululemon, what happened, and I guess leading up to essentially now?
Yeah. So I met an amazing girl named Victoria Marshman at Lululemon, and we just a very similar mindset, but we didn't actually know until we both stopped working at the company. She worked for a company that was presenting at the auto show. This is when I kind of tipped into BA work.
Yeah.
And she got me my first job as a host for Acura. I was just a backup for her, actually, hopping into a position on the tour. So I got to do that full tour. And I was like, oh, brand ambassador is probably the way I should go, because the flexibility really caters to me being able to audition. So I was at that point in my life where I was ready to kind of close the chapter on Lulu and find something that was a little more in flow with what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I started doing a bunch of BA work in all different shapes and sizes, but the main gig being as a presenter at the auto show. That was what I started as. And then I went into theater. I did a couple of theater shows where I consider myself, where I became a professional, so to speak. Just really getting to learn from the professionals I was working with. My first show ever was at Thousand Islands Playhouse. What an amazing place for your first show. Pirates of Penzance, they foster such a great environment for learning and understanding. That was kind of the beginning of it. I worked for a few years in theater, and then I just felt that I didn't necessarily have a super strong place in the industry. Having gone to a program that didn't focus on musical theater, none of my teachers were working in the industry that I was wanting to be a part of. And so there was this weird disconnect.
Yeah.
And two, I didn't necessarily always want to be in the chorus anymore. Again, struggling with this identity because I had changed from a dancer to more of a straight actor, if you will, classical. I already didn't know what I was doing. And then to be put in a chorus where you're one of a group of people, again, that wallflower thing was just a constant thing in my life. It was like, just disappear into the background. Don't stand out too much because the leads are more important. It was, again, this like battle, and it's not easy to hide as a 5'8" person, right? Like, especially as a 5'8" woman and in an industry like musical theater where there are all different sizes and shapes present on stage. Yeah, I just was like, this is not for me. Maybe I'll go back to it when I'm 40 or 50 and I can play moms. I would love to do that. That would be so cool, because there is an artistic thing about being on stage and communicating with the audience that is amazing. But yeah, so then a few years ago, I flipped into more of a TV and film focus while still doing BA work on the side to kind of supplement. And I've done film and TV since then. It's been amazing. Again, with COVID, that obviously shifted things totally. Because all of the BA work that I was normally doing wasn't present, and all the shows that we're filming weren't really filming. So this last year took a unique shape in comparison to most others. But yeah, so here I am now, just working, auditioning, doing my thing. So excited for whatever the next job looks like. That's kind of the overarching span of what took us to now. Like, I think, being an actor, I've learned so many things. I've done every possible aspect of the industry, from stand-in to background to principal to voiceover to like animated voiceover and commercial voiceover. I've had kind of a taste of all of it, which has now led me to finally know, what I want to do, so to speak.
Which you would say at this point is more quote unquote straight film, TV acting, right? Yeah. Cool.
Definitely.
Very cool. So one classic question, I think everyone, I don't know, I like to find this out because everyone's got their own little like journeys and ways this happens. But so did you land an agent after graduating?
I did not
Okay.
right after. It was shortly after, based on a referral from an old colleague and professor in Vancouver.
Right. And so there was like, I don't know, an email sent or whatever from
Yeah,
from a professor, and it was like, hey, you should check this out, and
yeah,
you met this agent, and they were like, okay, well, I'll assign you, and
yeah.
then and that was so. How long did it take before that happened after graduating?
Um, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't too
Yeah.
bad because I was back in Vancouver and my agent was also in Vancouver visiting other clients.
Right.
So, and I just happened to jump on a reading of a musical just as help. And the director of the musical was like, "Hey, my agent's coming." And I was like, "Oh, I'm actually looking for an agent." And they were like, "She's in Toronto," and da 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 da. And so that's when I met Kathy and we started working together. So it was a really cool, natural
So
introduction.
she saw you do the reading before you guys had a meeting.
Yeah, but I was only a choral support member of the show, so it's not like I had any sort of lines or character bits or anything. I think that more of I think looking back, more of the reason she signed me was because this director
Okay.
had and him and I had a great relationship, and he was
Yeah.
like, she's somebody you should look at working with.
Yeah, I just think I love asking that question because again, like I think most people, and I would include myself because I kind of I like sort of have an agent. It's not very clear, honestly. Like she
Yeah,
sends me stuff, but it's not really like fully speaking roles. It's a lot of like background
yeah,
and silent roles.
yeah,
But the eternal sort of like catch-22 that often happens, right? Is you don't have any professional work like in order to get an agent, you need professional work, and in order to get professional work, you need an agent. So
yeah.
so you have to like find ways to
Self
sort of
create.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's amazing that happened, and she's been your agent since.
She's been my agent since. Yeah.
And has she? What about like the different fields like voiceover, commercial? She's been
Yeah.
the one for all of that.
She hasn't actually. I, for a phase, worked with when I was a non-union artist, I worked with a non-union voiceover agency
Hmm.
called Tada. They were amazing, 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 amazing. I worked with the gentleman there and they worked in tandem. And at that time, Kathy wasn't sending me out for any sort of voiceover. So it was a welcomed slide in. I said that I was interested in enhancing that part of my career. And yeah. And then when I became part of the union and my agent decided no longer to be an agent and is now working with an amazing place called Kim Herden Casting, it just all dispersed. I was going to work with the other agent, but I wasn't interested in that. I wanted him and he was no longer there. So that sort of fell. And then Kathy then started to do a little bit more voiceover. Yeah, that's kind of
Okay,
how that worked.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And so when you got the agent, because I feel like this probably happens a lot where it's like, oh my god, like I have an agent, like I'm good, baby, like the auditions are gonna start rolling in, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
basically book most of them, or I'll be generous, like I'll book half of them, super naive, right?
Oh
So
my God. So
was
naive. Yes.
there like a rude awakening, or how did that go for you?
Definitely a rude awakening. Yeah, for sure. I had an expectation that she would be able to connect me with all of the directors and music directors and choreographers that I wasn't in contact with. I thought that she would just send my information to everybody. They would be like, "This is great. Let's cast her." So wrong. So wrong. I was also under the impression I didn't really fully understand the difference between a non-union,
Yeah.
like non-union auditions versus a union audition and why someone would go one way or the other. I thought that all non-union artists also got an equal shot at, large budget TV shows and stuff like that. But that's not the case. You
No.
definitely have to work your way in. And like you're saying, you do have to build this resume and work on shorts and whatever your own personal resume build looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, a huge rude awakening. And also too, I thought that she would just know everybody. Like I thought she was, best friends with all the casting directors and they were all just this little clique world and the jobs would just come. No.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's not at all what happened.
Yeah. So did you, because I feel like, again, most actors probably have a moment or a period where like they consider quitting straight up.
For sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time that I've kind of switched into a new, my focus is
Yeah.
voiceover. My focus is this, has kind of been like, I'm going to close the door on that chapter and start this chapter. And it's been
Yeah.
this wave. And like I said, just recently, I've now formulated, okay, this is what I want to do. But for a long time, it was like, I'm going to try this and maybe I'll be good at that. And I'm going to try this and maybe I'll
Mhm.
be good at that. Um,
Yeah.
jack of all trades, master at none fear. Like I was just like, boo. And too scared, too scared to commit or focus on one, with fear that the result might not be as pretty as I wanted it to be.
Right. But there's only so much you can control, right?
For
Because
sure.
that's what's really frustrating about, you know, dedicating full time to auditioning, which is very fair and very noble and everything. But it's so tough, I think, for your morale, because it's like you feel like you're not really, yeah, you're just completely focusing on like most of the time not getting it, because most of the time you don't, right? So you have to sort of
For sure.
not let that affect your self-worth. And I think I probably have issues with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I do too. I think that that's definitely, I obsess about things for a little bit afterwards and then I let them go. And I'm
Yeah.
really doing the work on trying to just say like, go in, do your work,
Yep.
leave. Because really
Yep.
that's when you get it. It's
Yeah.
like, it's so much easier said than done, but that's always when you get it.
Did you see that Bryan Cranston video where he talks about that?
No.
You might enjoy this. It's really interesting. He talks about basically when he was like around, I guess 20 years ago or whatever, when he was like around 40.
Yeah.
I think he got this from like a self-help thing, but it turned out to be very, very useful. It was
Yeah.
his mindset towards auditioning changed. It
Yeah.
wasn't about getting a role anymore. It was about giving. It was like, I'm here to do a job. This is my interpretation of the character in this way that serves the text and everything. I'm just here to
Mhm.
do my job where I give this performance, and then that's it. And then there's so many,
Yeah.
after that, there's so many factors that are out of his control or our
For
control.
sure.
Yeah.
I love
So,
that. I love that. I think that video sounds amazing. It's Bryan
yeah.
Cranston.
Yeah. Yeah. Google, if you
Yeah.
YouTube Bryan Cranston, I don't know, audition speech or
It'll come
whatever.
up.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna write it.
Yeah, go for it. I'm going to ask you a couple last questions here. I know I've taken up a lot of your time. You've been very, very generous and kind.
Okay,
So,
I love to talk. Well,
yeah,
don't even
sure.
worry.
That's great.
1 second. I'm just gonna turn on my light so that it's a little better.
Okay.
Hey, 1 second.
Get some water.
All right.
I don't.
There we go. Oh, that didn't help a whole lot, but you can kind of see it a bit better.
That's good. I don't think I actually truly asked you about the moment you decided you wanted to go into acting, because you talked about dance.
Yeah. The moment I decided I wanted to go, you mean specifically decided to go into like film acting versus
No, I guess I mean like to
like
go
back
into,
when I was young?
yeah.
When was the moment that I decided I wanted to get into acting? I almost think that I fell into it more than it's something I really chose. I think now it's a choice, but I think just by the nature of going into dance and
Yeah.
I was just like going with the wave and I was like, oh, I'm actually good at this and I love telling people stories and da 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 da. I would say it's probably only recently that I've truly decided to choose to be an actor. I think that point for me came, in my 20s when I was no longer just doing it because it was a natural thing. It was like, no, this is a choice and I'm committing to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was more recent.
Okay. Because were you almost like more into your, especially with like your background in dance, you were probably more into, you had the image of like, I guess, Broadway acting that more than like being an actor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. That's okay. That makes sense. And then, okay, from there, gotcha.
Yeah. It's kind of morphed and twisted and turned and become in what it is now. Yeah, it was so different before.
When you were a kid, because I'm majorly projecting here because this is definitely me. When you were a child or young, teen or whatever, tween, when you would watch movies, like, did you have a part of you that was like, oh, that I would like that for me to be me, please?
It's so funny. I can't say that I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can't say that I ever looked at the TV and was like, that's what I want to do, mommy. And it's so funny because my sister was very much like that. But for me, it was, and she's also an actor. And so it's really cool how our stories are so different. And it's something we talk about all the time. But yeah, I never had that. I kept myself so busy that I never really even had time to watch TV. I couldn't have even told you what I watched all through high school. Like, having a schedule that was too busy to even think of how I was feeling or go to the bathroom was very much my world.
But even at that time, so the schedule was like, yes, dance. What else was keeping you so busy?
It was dance. I would go to school. I was in a half-day program where I would do like half of a day at school, and then I would literally have an hour lunch, and then I would go dance all afternoon until like 8 o'clock at night, and the rest of the time.
Holy shit! Okay, I think I'm like underseeing the dance aspect. Like, seems like dance was like very much your identity for so long, right?
110%.
Yeah.
And then from dance, when I turned 15 or so, it was like dance and then theater. So not only was I doing this, like these nights at dance, I was missing dance to go to these rehearsals for shows. So it was like school, dance, show, school, dance, rehearsal, school, rehearsal. Like, it was bizarre. Like, my schedule was so cut and pasted together. And then it was like school, dance, rehearsal, competition. It was like just nuts. So fortunate again to have a childhood like this. Like, I look back and my mom is like a bloody goddess, and same with my dad for, allowing me to really express myself artistically. I was supported like, the freaking wazoo. Yeah, I didn't really have time, which is why I think it took me a long time through my 20s to really decide what it is that I wanted to do. That's why I had to try everything, because I literally was coming out of it being like, this is what I'm supposed to do, instead of what is it that actually makes me happy, and what messages do I want to get across, and what shows and actors do I want to emulate and be like, right? So
sorry,
in a sense, I late bloomed was what I was going to say. You know what I mean? Like, deciding what I wanted came a hair later.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure you mentioned it, but maybe I misheard. I don't really understand. But what type of dance exactly was it in high school?
Oh my gosh, everything under the sun. This girl was a hip-hop dancer. Okay. I did hip hop, tap, jazz, ballet, musical theater, more contemporary stage stuff. And it's so funny because I talk all about this dance and like this, that, and everything. But I am not a good hip hop dancer. Like, there is not one ounce of me that can like pull off a hip hop dance. But it was just what we did. Like, if you did one, you did the other, you did the next, you did this.
Yeah. One of my best friends is in this what I like to call a boy band called Marvel without the E, but they basically they're a breakdance hip hop crew, and they were gonna go to America's Got Talent, but the pandemic hit.
Oh my God! What a shift!
I know. Yeah. I mean, they did other stuff and everything, and their things are going quite well. But yeah, they're very very involved in the dance world. Okay, I've got
amazing.
Few questions I want to ask you here. So, what is a specific favorite stage memory?
A specific favorite stage memory. I worked in the Pirates of Penzance, that very first show that I worked on. I was working with a series of women who played my sisters. There was 5 of us that were all these girls. And we had to do this dance with parasols. They were like these little umbrellas. And I have never sweat so much in my life. I have never, every inch of my body, my kneecaps were sweating. I remember being like, my kneecaps are fucking sweating. Like, but getting to work with those ladies and getting to conquer this difficult singing while also running around like fleeting little girls with parasols. It was just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were sweating, but we were giggling. We were having such a great time. And in that group of women, I worked with a girl named Nicole Noseworthy and Andrea Houston, and the two of them were so supportive. We all vibed with one another and helped each other out. We all had our own strengths that we brought together. And I think I love working as a community with people. And that was not only a beautiful introduction to the community that it can exist in a theater or in a production, but a very, very positive memory for me.
Oh, I mean, like the community aspect of any production, or at least most productions, is like so, it's like so essential to the human soul. You know, that's probably one of my most missing components right now in my life. Like I'm generally quite happy in most areas, honestly, right now. But that's definitely probably the thing that's most missing is like a community aspect and just being a part of a group. And you know what I miss? We used to do these group hugs in the musical. Like after every decision we took, or at least like major decision, we would like have like a group hug, just dealing with it. I love that, you know?
Oh man. Well, you're doing this, you're connecting with people, you're creating a community, which is amazing. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, honestly, I mean, that's the best I can do at this point, because we're all alone and isolated. So I needed to do this to for a couple of reasons. I felt like I needed to do this. It made a lot of sense, and just like hanging out with people and actually getting the chance to hang out. Because you're right, most people don't really hang out. Like it's very sort of bing bang bang, and you know, there's a universe where you and I did this job and we were very matter of fact and like, oh hi Adriana, and do the presentation, and you know, that's the norm. But it's terrifying if it's just that.
I can imagine. I would like there was a few people that I experienced that with on the No More tour, that it was just kind of like, this is a job, let's sign in, let's do the presentation, let's leave. But then, you know, I feel really lucky that there was a few others that we would have dialogue right before. If we didn't have we had a no show, we talked for 15 minutes and then, you know what I mean? And I enjoy that so much more, especially like you said, right now, it is the concept of community and talking with people and conversation is so important to me too. So I love that you're doing this. I think it's amazing.
I appreciate that. Honestly, I really do. And you know, like for the people that like don't engage, you know, who knows what's going on in their lives, and their set of values don't perhaps reflect ours and whatever. Cool. Okay. This is a question I think I'm going to ask every actor on the show, because I'm trying to like get as much potential information. And if you don't have to answer it if you feel like, if you'd rather not, but and it's probably a question that most people hate, but like, how would you sum up your process when performing a character? If you don't have a process, that's okay.
Oh shit, that's a big question.
I know.
No, I definitely have a process. Definitely. Oh my God, how can I distill it down to like 3 or 20 words in a sentence?
Oh, I love it. Okay, I'm imagining you've got this in huge fucking like strategy and this, which I love. Send me
I have a
docs.
45-page PDF that I've memorized, which I can deliver to you at an alternative date. No. How would I describe my process?
Yeah.
I definitely work more from the outside in. I love coming up with like costumes, or perhaps how this character looks, to really help develop what the character looks like. But if I'm given a script in an audition, I will find out everything there is to know about the network, the show, the previous actors that have already been on there, what style they're like, what their focus is, whether or not it's more aesthetic based, like something like the CW, or whether it's something like HBO. Again, who and what are they seeing, and why are they hiring those actors? Then I will read as much of the script that I can. I'll like hunt for other audition sites that are up, see what they're all about. Then I'll go into the script, and through working with people like the Actors Foundry and Raw, which is Sophie and Rooney's studio, I have developed kind of a 10-step process that really helps me break down a script, which then leads me to the emotional circumstances of the character. Then I'll work a little bit on the emotional circumstances and really connecting them to myself. And from that, forget it all and then connect with whomever it is that I'm working with.
Yeah.
That's kind of summing it up. But Will, let me tell you, although that goes into so much detail, but that would be my process for sure. And then I do I love to just like sit in a character. So again, when I have those costume pieces, like there's a character that I'm working on right now from a play called Bug by Tracy Letts, and she's like a smoker. And if people who know me know that I have never smoked a cigarette in my life. And so I have these like
I'm very surprised to see you with a cigarette right now. Yeah.
Oh, they're herbal, don't even worry. And so
Okay.
it's like nicotine free,
Oh, okay.
and cannabis free cigarettes. They're just like a buddy of mine gave them to me like 10 years ago, and I still have 5, which will tell you how many characters I play that have cigarettes. Not many.
Yeah.
So yesterday I like walked around with a cigarette in my mouth because the character that I'm playing is she's a really elaborate character that is has chosen to self-isolate in a hotel because of fear of things that have happened in her past life, and she's an avid smoker and cocaine user, crack user, and she goes into hysterics. She experiences paranoia, but cigarettes are a huge part of her life because she uses them to kind of like numb herself from the reality. So I spent the day with this in my mouth, like walking around, just trying to get used to it.
I love that. Now this is a very specific question because I deal with that a little bit. Let's say if I would be attempting to do something like that, where, I'm playing a character, I don't know, who has a crutch or whatever, a cigarette or whatever. How do you, like, in your day to day, like with your fiance, are you like, no, I'm in character, just shut the fuck up, let me do my thing? Or do you kind of just go about as if you're you, but you're kind of just, you're focusing on the physical act of the cigarette?
If I'm about to do anything that's like character related, I will let Corey know and just be like, hey man, I just so you know, I'm going to be yelling in a North Dakota accent tomorrow night, because I'll just kind of give him the heads up and say, we have a gentleman that lives below us here in the space that we're living in. So like I'm telling him, like, Monday nights, I'm doing an acting class. If you hear me go crazy and yelling in like a totally different accent or as a man or whatever it may be, that's what's happening. So I definitely preface it just to give myself permission to really delve into the character.
Yeah.
Pardon me. I think that for a long time, I wouldn't take the space that I needed. Therefore, my characters were coming out super half-ass because I'm like, no, I'm too scared to do that. But it's like, the character deserves to be represented the way the character should be represented. And so whatever I need to do to create an environment for me to do that, I will now do. So I'll let roommates know. I will say, Corey, can you take the dog out for an hour? I'll find a babysitter for the dog. He'll go to his dog friend's house. You know what I mean? So now I will take the space, but for a really long time I didn't. And I so wish that I could turn back time because, do the character justice. The story needs to be told for a reason. So I preface it. It just so happened that I did have some time home alone yesterday. So a lot of this happened when my hair was like flipped over and I was like with a baggy t-shirt on walking around the house. Yeah.
That's great. And I'm really, that's honestly, that's super useful for me to hear. Cause I think I still struggle with sort of like, well, I don't want to upset or weird anyone out, like in my bubble, even though I live alone. I think, but I'm still like, I still have a part of me that's like, I don't want to be too loud for my neighbors or whatever, but I think I can push towards, this is my job. And this, like you mentioned, the character deserves whatever you need to do to portray the character to the potential that you think is there.
Totally. Because if I think about if I wrote myself into something and I was character, I would want that actor to go balls to the wall, Adriana.
That's true.
Right? Like, and I know you'd be the same way. You're like, I want them to have all my quirks and weird isms. And so if I'm expecting that from somebody, I owe it to this character of Agnes that I'm playing to really go, full North Dakota, she has guilt. She's lost her son. She has an abusive ex-husband. Like, what is her world? I have to bring that forward. I owe it to her.
What's the play? Bug
by Tracy Letts.
Oh, I love Tracy Letts. Osage County.
Actually, you would love it because his world is kind of dark, twisted. There's some Bug is a dark, twisted piece, and he's got another piece as well. Anyway, I can send you Bug. afterwards,
Sure.
so you can read it
I'd
if you
love
want.
that. Well, have you
Yeah.
read August Osage County?
I have not read it. I've heard bits and pieces of it.
I loved it. I mean, they also made a movie with like an incredible ensemble cast, like
Yeah, is Meryl Streep in that?
Meryl Streep, Julia
Yeah.
Roberts, Benedict Cumberbatch, Ewan McGregor.
Oh,
Who
love
else?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Just fucking everyone was in that movie, and I really enjoyed it. Like I thought it because I'd seen the play,
Yeah.
and I thought both worked fantastically well.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'll send you Bug afterwards and you can read
Cool,
it.
nice. Okay, I really hope you have something good here because I know I definitely have some moments. Your worst brand ambassador moment.
My worst brand
If you don't have one,
ambassador.
then that's okay.
Oh my God. I don't know if this is the worst moment. The worst outfit I've ever had to wear was, it was for like Aquafina, I think, some sort of water something. And we were given these shirts that we had to like make look cool. So I put on these like baggy jeans. This was years ago. And it was a baby's body, and my head belonged to this baby's body. And so we were like, makes you feel fresh as a baby was kind of the like thing. And it was awful. Like it was so bad. So that's a not great brand ambassador experience. But remind me of, what was the exact question?
Just your worst brand ambassador moment, because what I'm thinking in my head, it's something along the lines of like, I once did something where it was like a festival, and the tent fucking blew off, and like, and the worst BA gig I ever did, I think, and it's also because at that particular time things were not going quite well.
Yeah.
It was this super bleak thing for like a grill, like a Tefal grill in a Canadian Tire,
Yeah.
like in this weird part of town. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, what am I doing with my life right now? Like it was, I mean, I got over it and it was okay, but like it felt so fucking bleak at that particular moment, So I was
So you're just like, I wouldn't necessarily say, though, I mean, I've had that many times where I'm like, what am I doing right now? I'm standing in an elf costume and I'm like, I've all the costume things. I worked another one for Paw Patrol and I was like, what am I doing? But hey, you know what? I'm making money.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm working a flexible schedule. Like
Yeah.
that always kind of pushed it forward. But I've had a couple negative experiences with not so amazing, just like, strange eyes as a host, right? So I've had people take weird photos and have weird communications with me so I have unfortunately had that world come up too.
And that feels like that's just that. Would you say that also might not be just BA world? That's probably the world of being a woman.
100%. I think that lots of women have experienced this. I definitely don't think it's only associated with BA, but if we're talking about not so great experiences in the BA world, that is one place where I have received that sort of attention, which hasn't been the most comfortable.
Would you say more the auto shows than not?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
I did go for it.
No, you did the auto show. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention, I did the auto show, I think once or twice. And I mean, I got through it, but like, it was like 12 hours, no fucking actual breathable air, just like the stiffest, what's the word? Not cement, but like,
no support in the shoes and floor.
Support in the shoes, just like standing there, and it was like super sort of like just what was it? It was like, what I go like do the contest or whatever, like just repeat that for 12 hours. And I can only imagine like you guys, mind numbing for sure. But the girls, the women have to deal with the added benefit of fucking old men being like, just creepy dudes being like, how many times have I heard a colleague being told like, hey, does she come with the car?
Classic. Totally. The worst, not the worst, one thing that stands out that happened over the years was a gentleman that was speaking about a truck, and as a woman speaking about a truck, a woman in her 20s speaking about a truck, he just thought I had no validity. And he instead told me that he thought I'd be better off selling shoes than I would be selling cars. and trucks. And it was just, you know, it was just ridiculous. That, like I said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But
yeah, I bet. Anyway, that's a whole other, that is a whole conversation I'm assuming we could have. Okay, one last thing, and then I'll let you go. I checked it out a little bit. You did this really dope role on The Expanse.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How did that go?
That was amazing. My experience on The Expanse was so much fun. Yes, I did it. I was in 2 episodes. I got an eye disease and I was sick, and that was super sweet.
What the fuck?
There was so many interesting things about that show. Days before I had booked the role and auditioned for it, I actually did a day of background on the set of The Expanse.
Oh, no way.
And they were like, they were going through a line of people, and they're like, oh, we need women who can fit in the men's costumes. So we need tall girls that could fit, you know, XY male sizes. And so here I am, like, being incognito, trying to be, at least, so that, hoping that I would get an audition for the show. And so I was really doing my best to remain kind of in the background. And they were like, Adriana. And I was like, oh no. So I wore the cop outfit, period, did my day on set, left. And then 2 days later, my agent sent me a message saying, hey, Adriana, you've got an audition for The Expanse. I'm like, amazing. I know what the set looks like. Oh, hold it. I know that they want women who can fit male costumes. Therefore, I'm already a step ahead, because I was going for a guard. And so I already knew in my head, okay, they clearly like my look, because I've already been, you know, brought into that world. And I was asked to stay later because I was a woman who could fit the male costume. So I went into that audition being like so confident, which is exactly what they had wanted. Mm-hmm. Because I think the line that I had to say is like, what the fuck are you doing? Was the audition line. And anyway, so yeah, everything about that audition, the whole process was really cool, except for the fact that I was actually suffering from pneumonia and shingles when I shot that.
Fuck,
so
man.
I was sicker than a dog, and I was wearing 15 layers of clothing, and it was like the best experience combined with the worst experience. Yeah, in such duality. So like I said, I had the time of my life. I can't wait to be back on set. That was an amazing time for me, but I was so fucking sick, man. It was awful.
It's great. Well, I checked it out, and you don't seem sick at all. Like, you just, you know, I was sort of like, holy shit, that's Adriana. But like, it was super believable, and like, it, you know, there was nothing to like notice.
Think otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, hold on a second, because you had done background work, and in my mind, it's like, if you do background work, chances are you probably won't get cast in that same show as not even like a silent role. Like, you had a speaking role, which I'm like very surprised about.
Yeah, I was shocked too. At that time, I was not under the impression that was the case. It was like, any show that you do background on, if you can keep yourself hidden, you can be an actor. I now know that that was a totally naive way to think about it. And you know, other shows that I did do background on, like The Handmaid's Tale, for example, I was a wife all through season 3. No way. I missed my chance of auditioning for that show, and I'm very aware that I kind of wrecked that for myself.
But I mean,
yeah, but again, you know what I mean? Like, so that's what happened. I did do background. I stayed hidden on that set.
Yeah. Really.
So incognito, except for when they called me out, and there was thankfully 2 other women that were with me. So I wasn't the only lady cop that was kept for later. But it was a beautifully blissful thing that happened in like back-to-back weeks. So I think I maybe just caught the timing right, because normally I think that it would hinder your experience and ability, but
maybe you did, like, you were able to like stay hidden, and then, you know. So what I'm trying to figure out is, they asked you, they were like looking for a guard, right? When they were picking out, so they already were looking. So that was almost like the audition right there.
Well, it would have been totally different people, right? Because the people on set wasn't the casting director that called me in. I think that they were just like, this is the aesthetic that we're looking for. And everybody on set was clearly very aware of what that aesthetic looked like. And so when they saw somebody that fit into that world, they were like, slot.
But you could have been not an actress.
Totally. Yeah.
That's what I don't understand. because
Yeah.
and then they got you to audition, but you could have been like, sorry, I'm not like an actress, I've never taken an acting class or anything. They
Yeah.
were just purely going off like,
Literally who could fit the sizes. They literally said the
wow.
only reason we kept you behind, and I mean, obviously you needed to have the look that Expanse wanted and the like kind of sci-fi,
Sure.
like stronger aesthetic, strong
Yeah.
jawline, whatever.
Yeah.
So they clearly know their world, but yeah, that's how it works. And they were like, oh yeah, the only reason we kept you is because you can fit the size small in the men's costumes, and we needed women who could fit them. And I'm like,
And I'm
okay,
here.
cool.
Yeah.
There's one freaking aspect where being a tall girl kind of played out. So law enforcement
Yeah.
is one of those things.
Here we are, full circle. But I'm just surprised that was the process for a speaking role, because in my mind, speaking roles are fucking another game,
Yeah, let me clarify. The day where, so I did background on the like Monday, for example, and so I was called in as like a member of the new world that they were in. And then in that day, they needed people to stay for a future scene. So they were looking for cops from that group. And then I was one of the people that they chose. And then 2 days later, I received an audition from my agent where I was going for a cop. And that's when I read for the audition, booked the audition. And that's how I shot the speaking role. So totally disconnected experiences. I don't think I explained that. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine. I mean, it all worked out, but that's great. That's amazing. And again, I checked it out. I was like, holy fuck, that's super. Yeah. Speaking role. Like I fucking have yet to get that. I'm doing like silent roles and things like that. But it's the journey.
It's totally the journey, and I think that for me, any sort of experience on a set, whether or not it's as a commercial actor, whether or not it's as background, speaking, non-speaking, lead, I mean, it's all giving you the experience of what it means to be in this industry, right?
Yeah.
And
true.
So assuming that one person has had a better experience versus somebody else is so not, it just can't be looked at that way because everybody's journey is different.
Yeah, exactly.
And for a long time, having done background and stuff like that, I was like, I had so many, and like going from theater to film and what people thought, like I had so many judgments that I was not only putting on myself, but I was thinking that other people were thinking of me. And it can just lead you to such a place of like, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I fucking love being on a set, even if it's just background. I love it.
I love it too.
12 hours.
Yeah. Anywhere on a set. I've like background. I even did a season as a stand-in on Star Trek, and that was so enlightening. Again, wasn't for me, but I really enjoyed my time there. Specifically, I just enjoyed working with the crew. The crew is amazing. But in that place, I was more of a crew member than I was part of the talent base. So you're getting such a different perspective.
That's true.
And all of them, I think, shape you.
Yeah.
They've all shaped me for the next time that I get to be on set.
Yeah,
I can speak from my own experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you mean by it wasn't for you?
I didn't like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's stand-in is that's tough because you really just got to like stay in one spot fucking long time, right?
Yeah, stay in one spot long time, and just on set with a lot of not a lot to do, in the sense of like a lot to do but not a lot to do for those moments where you're waiting, and just sitting around. Like I said, if you're working as an actor, you're kind of focusing on other things. You're memorizing lines, your hair and makeup, you've got things and to do, you've got this checklist. But as a stand-in, you go, you do your checklist, you leave, you're watching the actor, making sure you replicate them. And it just wasn't fulfilling in the way that I had imagined it to be.
And I feel like on the other side of that coin, like the background people, at least in my experience, you're kind of just like hanging out with a bunch of people. It's like you're just sort of, hey, what's up? Like meeting people, and maybe you just want to like hang out and read a book or whatever. But I've met great people through doing background work, and it's sort of like it's almost like more hanging out than work.
Yeah, I totally agree. You're hanging out. You're getting paid to hang out. It's such a different world. Such a different world. Again, a great experience. Just it was very different from standing in, which is also very different from principal work. They're all so vastly different that you're just all in the same place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been fucking awesome. And you're my first guest since I took a break because of the program. Because I was doing these episodes basically weekly.
Oh
And
my
then
God.
yeah, and I lacked episodes because normally I like to have like a good, let's say I'd like to have like maybe even like 10 saved
Yeah.
up so that I can, if I'm busy, I can just upload them. Yeah, exactly. But I ran out, and then the program started, and I was like so fucking sick of being in front of a screen, and just like I need to get the fuck away from my sweaty thighs on this seat and fucking this apartment. So I took a break from my pod, and you're the first one back, baby.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
Is there anything you'd like to promote or talk about, or?
I for sure. So many things. What do I love? I'm so digging. I'm working with Sophie Ann Rooney. I'm totally digging her programs, her practices, her audition technique class about what it's like to audition during COVID and how the industry's adjusted was enlightening. So that was amazing. There's also a community conversation that my sister and her best friend host every Sunday, which is such a great place. So if people are just looking for a place to talk and they want to speak with the community about so many different subjects, tune in. Christina Crivici, Ryan Jin, they're amazing. Yeah, that's
cool.
Those are my two big things right now. If people have any questions on DIY and renos, obviously Corey and I spend a lot of time with real estate and that kind of stuff. So we didn't even touch on my world in that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think maybe that was like probably a conscious choice on my part. Cause I at this point I have no investment in real estate. In fact, it probably intimidates me more than anything. But perhaps one day that will change. And actually I hope it'll change one day. Just cause I see myself taking up more real estate sometime.
Heck yeah. Building yourself an empire, man.
That's the goal.
But yeah.
And people can find you on Instagram, right?
People can find me on Instagram. Yep. And they can also find me on IMDb. Adriana Crivici is my name. The last thing I guess is just, it was so lovely to be here and chat with you. And I'm so excited that we were introduced to one another from Health Canada. What a treat.
Very much what a treat.
What a treat. Oh my gosh. And just to everybody out there, like I get that this is a really hard time and everyone's going through tons of different stuff, but use your experiences to impact and affect how you walk into every day, because experience is beautiful. It's not something to hide behind, and we've all gone through stuff. So let's share, let's talk about it. Let's clear the air so that everyone can not necessarily be positive, but just, you never know what kind of perspective you can show somebody else about their experience.
That's great. I appreciate that. And I think we should do this again at some point, sometime, if you want. Cool.
Yeah. Let's do it again.
Well, listen, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.